So we're in the top section on page Dalet. The third line, we'll start from the third line. We are in the midst of explaining the principle of ratzon being a memutza between the matil and the ne'atzonim. And we explained a very important principle in this presentation, this term. Memutza does not mean that through that you get there. Like you go from New York to Montreal and you ride on the highway, but New York remains behind you. You are on the highway and you get to Montreal and you have no connection to New York. A memutza means that it connects between the two extremes. As if to say that you take New York with you and New York is what inspires your being in Montreal. That's a completely different thing. This memutza means the ratzon is a memutza between the ratzon, the atzmus, and brings the atzmus element into that into which the ratzon is focused on. Ayin dan. Das mit der memutza. Okay, so now we're in the third line from the top. Uka-asher all of it is body. So we spoke about ratzon per se before the Yisraelis. Uka-asher all of it is body, and when it occurred in Hashem's ratzon that there should an element of identity, an element of gilui. Harei zeh bechinas hamshocha v'gilui. That has the quality of hamshocha, of a drawing, and gilui in revelation el klolos hayishtalshelus bichlal, to the hishtalshelus in overall, in general, the whole principle of hishtalshelus. In other words, the ratzon has brought a hamshocha of the source of the ratzon, the atzmus, into hishtalshelus. That there is a connection between atzmus and hishtalshelus through the ratzon. Or eleze erum yiprat, whether it's closer hishtalshelus in overall, or to any particular world.
That's what Hamshacha means?
Yes. Right. We spoke about it in the Moshul yesterday, the day before. V'agam debchinas horotzin hulamaylo adayim his havus. Although that the aspect of rotzin is still above the aspect, the principle of his havus, of creation, of there being something separate from the source, a created entity. The ratzon that there is a revealed ratzon is not yet his house. As in the example, in the case of Aliyah's ratzon, that the ratzon revealed itself. Of Erin Sof Lifnei tzimtzum, the ratzon the way it is in Erin Sof Lifnei tzimtzum. Harei, so there, Vigdei Sheyi is Havas Ho'ilamis, in order that they should facilitate and bring about the creation of worlds, Hu tzrach liyes ha tzimtzum tchila. There was need to be a tzimtzum first. Because that ratzon per se is completely above world. Shezehu, and this tzimtzum represents bechinas silug ha'oir. This represents the removing of the oir. But and from this ratzon itself cannot be creation of world. Again, what is the definition of world? Is havos oilams. Just as we give the example of the table in the human being. The table is conceived in the human mind, and as we explain all the time, that actually it is rooted in his ratzon and in his nefesh, in the reality of the human being. And then it becomes identified, that this reality is identified in ratzon, that yes, I want a table. What is a table? In actual fact, a table has to be created, which means that this ratzon has to be broken down into components. How do you facilitate a table in the world? It's not a table. There's components, and there's means how the components are connected. And even beyond the components, the very design of the table, the way it is in the world, is a completely different reality, different element than the way it is conceived in the nefesh. So from the way it's conceived in the nefesh to the actual design of the table is a big gap. And it has to be a tzimtzum, a silug ha'oir. What does it mean, silug ha'oir? The way it is in the nefesh, you conceive not the component, not the structure. What does it mean? What is it about? This is the reality of the table in the nefesh. And it's there automatically. Yeah, that really complements, so to speak, the human being. And that you don't have to build. It's there automatically. I could see that this complements a human being. To bring it down to a level where it needs to be built, you have to what's called silug ha'oir. You cannot think of it in terms of its reality. You have to think in terms of its kelim, of its components. How does that translate on the worldly arena? You want to represent a nefesh element in a completely dry world that does not have nefesh. Then you start. Then you first begin to plan how you're going to do it. It originates in the ratzon, and ultimately, when the table is built, the ratzon relates to it, but it's at a completely different level, different realm. But in order to facilitate its being built from the ratzon has to be removed, because if you are thinking in terms of the finished product, you're not going to have a table. Not even thinking in terms of finished product. In ratzon, you think in terms of what its meaning to the human being is. You're never going to design a table from that.
Even though at the outset we were saying how the ratzon is this mamutza and a continuous connection, somehow in the process of making the table there is a siluf, is a removal of the ratzon.
The process, and not removal of the oil of the ratzon. not the ratzon. The mobile, the oil. There has to be a tzimtzum. The ratzon initiates it, and the ratzon is ultimately the memutza. What is the memutza? Memutza is bringing nefesh into the world. But that is not yet a finished product. Now with that hamshocha, that level is not yet ready to create world. Even though this is really the initiator. But you have to remove the oyer. What's oyer mean? Oyer means the essential reality that you don't have, it's there automatically. This is the reality. Do we get this point? It's the oyer element. Good. So you have to be silug ha'oyer in order to be able to relate to world, which world does not have oyer. One does not consist of oyer. Oyer consists of kelim, of components. Like we say in a house a house consists of 4 walls and a roof and a ceiling. A house is a home for a human being. And the fact that there is 4 walls and that is how you translate the house, the home element on an external level. But in essence, it's a completely different thing. So that's what you say. That this aliyah ratzon has an element of hamshocha in Megillah Klose Shtalshalos. Although it is still totally removed above his havas, the creation. Because to create you have to remove the oil so that you can identify the components that will enable this ratzon to be translated on a worldly level. World means, therefore we are coming to a clear definition of world. World, there is not the element of etzem in world. Nothing is true in and of itself. Everything in the world is composed of small entities, small elements. And together they represent something in the nefesh. Like a word, one word is composed of several letters. Each letter is called in Zohar a stone. From the letter, it does nothing. But 2 letters together say a concept that is a human concept. You cannot represent the human concept but by these components. In the world, such a human concept doesn't exist in and of itself. This is what world is. So this is what we say, that oil there has to be a tzimtzum in order to bring out, and this is silug oyer. You have to remove the oil in order to facilitate and reveal the world element. 3 lines from the bottom. Similar the madregas after the tzimtzum. Sheyesh kama tzimtzum. After the tzimtzum, after the major tzimtzum, there are still further further tzimtzumim that remove further the oil and allow a further revelation, a further presence of world. Ukmoi tzimtzum ak, as the tzimtzum of ak, Odom Kadmin. Odom Kadmin is the first madrege, so to speak, after the tzimtzum. It's called Odom Kadmin. We discussed it in the previous Hamshah. And that forms a tzimtzum. The tzimtzum hadikno and so forth. There are many tzimtzum afterwards. So therefore, there are many tzimtzum afterwards. How is it a mamutza? There's big gaps over there. Yet still, and this is the important point, Harei zeh b'chinas mamutza, it is nevertheless, it still has the element of being a mamutza, and again, what mamutza means, that it brings the two together.
What's it? What has the
This oyer after the tzimtzum, and this oyer after the ratzon, even though they're tzimtzumim after the ratzon, still the ratzon represents in from mamutza, that it brings the two extremes together. Even though ultimately to reach the further extreme you have to be many tzimtzumim, you have to remove the oyer. Nevertheless, it is still a mamutza, and you have an element of the ratzon all the way down to the furthest end. Shenase ha'oyer begeder shaychus al ha'olamis, that as a result of the ratzon, the oyer becomes begeder shaychus al ha'olamis. Begeder means within the fence of having a relationship to world. Even though, as we said, it's not related to world. It has to be many tzimtzumim before world surfaces. But it is within that realm. Of shachos ha'olamis. Shemizeh yizhavu ha'olamis, where from this oyer that now it came to the point where it has a shaychus ha'olamis, this is where the world are rooted. This is where the world are going to be created. They will come to be. Okay, to whatever extent we understand this, we've been on this several days. We always point out, on the very top, the very source in Atzmus, the Rambam, this is a Nigla Sefer, he calls it Motzei Rishon. We can all understand that Motzei Rishon has no components. Motzei Rishon does not have any kind of definitive presence. This Motzei Rishon, he does not have any definitive presence. And yet, this Motzei Rishon, why does it not have any definitive presence? Because it is above, it is greater than that. It's the truth of presence. What has a definitive presence? Something that depends on these components. To whatever degree. Something that has to be made, and it depends on its components, that has definitive presence. Motzei Rishon is not made. It's truth beyond conception. From this Motzei Rishon, now, this is the point. This Motzei Rishon, yes, indeed, it has no components whatsoever. But this is the reality the reality of the extreme reality and the reality of everything. This reality represents nothing and everything. It represents nothing in terms of its being, but it facilitates everything. This everything, this is what we talked about, the ratzon, merutza. Everything cannot create anything. In order to create anything, you have to identify what you're going to create. You can create everything. The ratzon, the initial ratzon, does not have any kind of identity of ratzon, because that ratzon is based not on the fact that I want, but on the fact that I'm real. Therefore, that ratzon does not have any components. Reality doesn't have any components. It's not dependent on components. Then, when this ratzon becomes identified as a ratzon, I want, in there is already possibility for components. It's called aliyah ratzon. Even though aliyah ratzon does not define specifically at all what you want. But then the ratzon itself is now a presence coming from the reality itself, but having an independent, a separate identity. That already facilitates further his house. In other words, we have moved it from nothing to everything. Once you move it to everything, then you can begin to draw from it certain identities or specifics. He says, quality styles means everything, but everything. Above that is nothing.
This arousal sounds like a tzimtzum, since he went from...
this arousal does represent a tzimtzum.
It is. He went from I am real to I want. He went a different basis.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I said, nothing, the coming to everything is a big tzimtzum. This everything level, this is a memutza. It is the connecting link between the nothing and the world. Thereby bringing to the world also this element, the supreme element of atzmos, of nothing. Because this everything is a regilui is a derivative, a hamshacha of this, from this nothing. This is a mamutza, and this oil becomes thereby, even though it's still in klolus ishtalshalos, shaychus al ha'ilmus, it has a relationship to the world. Because, as we said, because there are components there. It's not that it's dependent on components, but there are components.
I don't know if it's outside the scope of this, but how is it a hamshacha? How's it a continuation when it's being this tzimtzum? And the truth of the matter is just the I am real. So how's I want a hamshacha from the I am real?
That's why I said to you before that this reality itself is both. Inherent in the reality is nothing, and because of nothing there is also everything. Therefore, this is Hamshocha from the everything part of the nothing. All right. Wow. They finish a whole race. Okay, Kitzur. What is the synopsis of this ois? Yikshe. He asks a question, the mashma, that initially it appears that the two crowns are due to the fact because they preceded Naset and Nishma. But afterwards it concludes and says, one is for Nasa and one is Knagin Nishma. Not the precedent, but Nasa by itself and Nishma by itself. Medrash Rabbi Yisha and Medrash Yitzhak HaKadosh Baruch Hu Meis and Shtei HaTorahs Breish Bono. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts the two crowns on the head of his sons. The Kanoi Meir, and here in the Medrash it says, Yordu Malachi HaShoretz V'Kosher. The Malachi HaShoretz came down and they crowned the Yid. Or Mishnah, the obviously said, and in Mishnah, in obviously it says, Shleishak Sorim Heim. There are 3 Ksorim, of the Prot is Choshev, Dalek Sorim. And then when he specifically mentioned the Ksorim, it comes down from the initial statement, there are 3 Ksorim. And start enumerating them, he comes out with 4 Ksorim. Hagimuk Ksorim Heim, and then he explains Hagimuk Ksorim Heim, Begimuk Kavim. He explained that the Yimuk Sorim, the 3 Sorim, are representative of the 3 Kavim of a mean, small, and emtzah. And then Yagdim Inyan HaKeser Bichlal. Then in a line of explaining the above, he starts talking about introducing the Inyan of the Keser Bichlal, that what is Keser in general, in principle. And he brings down then Gimel Pirushim B'Keser. There are 3 translations of what Keser. Aleph, 1 is Loshan Hamton. Keser is Katar, means wait. What is how is waiting explains anything? Who? And it is an expressing the principle Ha'kova v'Ha'tikva. Hold off, but you can anticipate something. In other words, in Keser there is already something to be anticipated, even though right now it is not yet identifiable. Beis, and the other explanation about Keser Loshan HaTorah. That Keser means like a crown. Gimel, and the third meaning of Keser is Loshan Sivo. Sivo means surrounding. V'yivayer, and he explains Shei Keser, that the Keser ad Rum HaMailos, all the way to the top, to the highest Madrege, Hu Bechinas Horotzin, is the element of Rotzin. That's what the Rotzin. Shekoil El HaKoil, that includes everything. Umaki V'soiv HaKoil, and it surrounds and embraces everything. Both it includes everything and at the same time it's above everything. V'lochein, and this is why Keser B'chol Mokoim Hu Bechinas Memutza. This is why Keser, in any Madrega to identify Keser, it has the quality of Memutza, of the intermediary of that connects it to the top and our key, because before there was Hisoyrus of Rotzin, the Aralos of Rotzin, the Rotzin, when the Rotzin was unto itself, even unto himself, before there was Hisoyrus of Rotzin, even to himself, so to speak, he didn't know about his Rotzin. That's a manner of speech. So then this element of this rotzin is totally concealed and totally removed from any gilui, from any expression. They say there was a rotzin, and then there is the arals of the rotzin, the surfacing of the rotzin. That represents a hatoyo, a leaning towards one thing or another. His galus and revelation lies between the shaykhus, that he's inclined to have a shaykhus to world. This is the hisenus of us.
Okay. So koil lakoil, soiv b'maki bakoil. This is two different levels in
That's
ratzon.
right. Two different aspects of it.
Or soiv b'maki bakoil is coming to explain koil lakoil. Koil lakoil.
Koil hakoil is sourced in the cerebral. This is a lower matter. All right, this will be it for this morning.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you. It's more.